Eve 2020, May 20th. I am Adderall. Let's talk about EVE Online today with Rogue Consortium. I want to introduce William. How's it going?
Howdy.
And Shakeen is with me too. Shakeen, say hello. Don't be rude.
Hello.
All right. Dragged you on. All right, let's check out. Let's start with the PCU again. Still doing good numbers here. 37, near 38. Actually, it's more like 37 this time. But you can see the big gap here is an extended downtime that happened. It looks like a couple drops in there. Don't know if that's drops in the game or this map didn't get information for some reason. Sometimes it doesn't pull. But PCU is currently at 30,000 and going up. Okay, looking at Dotlan, let's have a look at the statistics for most violent regions in the last 24 hours. We'll start with nullsec. The Killboards Expanse had 685 ships destroyed. Delve comes in second with 594, and Providence, again, 549. So we'll talk about Providence because Rogue Consortium lives in Providence, and we'll learn more about them, their group, their organization, their mission, that sort of stuff in just a few moments. Looking at Empire Space, in Lonetrek, you have a huge number, 3,268. Now, Lonetrek is usually the top three, but for it to be in the #1 spot with basically 800 ships destroyed more than the Citadel and the Forge, something's going on there. We'll check that out. We'll come back for that. Most violent systems, Rio they call it, but it's R10 TAC GN. That's headquarters for, or that's where the Beanstar is for Horde. Had 256 ships destroyed. I do know there was a dread bomb there from Goons Swarm, and they took out, I think they took out a Titan. We'll check that out too.
Yes.
#2 in Delve is 1DQ. That's Imperium's headquarters. 108 ships destroyed. And again, Providence at #3. The system is the heart of Providence, 9UY4 TAC. 96 ships destroyed there. Going over to Tama, Rakapas, Amamaki are the top 3 systems in LOSEC. Those are very traditional LOSEC systems. And the Tama comes in at 574 ships destroyed. And then a huge drop to Rakapas at 200 and an Amamaki at 150. Not much going on there. And then in high sec, most violent systems will look for anomalies here. Jita is first place with only 409 ships destroyed. If anything, that is a low number by far, maybe like 25% of usual. Yudama 735, also a low number. And then Rane, you can see it crawl into 3rd place because the first 2 are not very high, and that's at 625 ships destroyed. That is the Bleaklands region, which is faction warfare. All right, something that does look normal again is the NPCs in the last 24 hours, how many of those have been destroyed in 0-0. And you'll see some of the traditional places here with the traditional amounts. PTAC-Z in Oasa, that's Fraternity Space, has 35,798 NPCs destroyed. Then a pretty significant drop-off to 28,211 for 5ED in Cobalt Edge. And then Kalevala Expanse System S TAC L has roughly 28,000 ships destroyed. Those are all NPCs. That's why they're much higher than normal PvP combat. Okay, let's have a look at some of these other interesting situations up here. Let's start with Lonetrek and figure out why that number is so high. If you already know, save me the trouble and tell me. Let's see. Okay, so it's a couple of areas. You can see the hot spots light up in red and orange and then yellow. Everything else that's green or white is pedestrian amounts of destruction. But this one here has 200. I'm going to zoom in there. Isanamano had 300 ships destroyed, and right next to it is Umasasian. Wow. That has 300 ships destroyed. So you can see it starts to add up. And Kino had 176 ships destroyed. That's coming right out of the Citadel. The connecting system there is Vinilan. So that leads to Kino inside a Lonetrek. And then they jumped through Aranta here, but then got into Umasasian at 303. And then it got into Isanamo, 362. So there's definitely something going on there, whether it's the same fight carrying on. Not sure. Let's see.
Lots of code on the kill board. Lots of code.
Is it code just basically camping that pipe?
Yeah, looks like it.
Let's see why they're camping that pipe. We look at jumps in the last 24 hours. You can see that that is the path from, one of the paths from Citadel to Jita. Let's see if that's ordinary. Sobieski, by the way, Sobaseki is Lonetrek's like market system. And it is one jump out of Jita. You can see Jita's right above it. So that is usually a well-traveled path to Jita and coming from Citadel. And I think if I look at Citadel, yeah, I think that's the low, you can see the low sec area here in the top left circled by pink. So coming into Jita, you would go through Kino and then into Jita like 5 jumps away. So that is a pathway. That is a pathway to the marketplace of Jita. And that is a pipe of sorts. So that might be why that was camped out. Like normally you camp between two systems, Amarr and Jita. But this is kind of a secondary route that gets you from Blackrise and Faction War area to the marketplace. And so this looks like it was surprise camped. We're going to check out the system. We've already heard it's, oh, was it code? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So a lot of the destruction is actually code being destroyed by the authorities after they gank. So one of the things, it's not that gankers are destroying thousands and thousands of ships. It's more like thousands and thousands of their cheap ships are being destroyed every time they nab or destroy a really expensive ship. Something along those lines.
And when they prime the system. So you can see a lot of Velators dying. That's them priming the system.
Yeah, describe what priming the system is for people that don't know.
Sure. So if you gank someone in a system, the NPC police spawn, but then those police remain in the system. So if you kill a bunch of Velators and you cause Concord to spawn on the opposite side of the system, they won't respawn at the site where you actually do the gank. Instead, they will warp, which means that you have a few more valuable seconds with which to kill the freighter or whatever.
It's decoying, right? Or distracting.
Exactly. It's putting the police on the opposite side of the system, far away from where you're actually doing the real killing.
It takes them a while to respond. The lower the security, I believe, the longer it takes for them to respond.
Exactly. So lower the security, longer it takes for them to respond. And if you add a few more seconds on top of that, boom, you have sometimes, 3 or 4 seconds is all you need. That's the difference maker.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to our statistics. So that's what's going on in Lonetrek. Code got active on, which is a very interesting pathway to Blackrise, I think. So I wasn't aware of it, but you're going to see a lot more of that sort of ganking happening on off paths, because my feeling is that the normal traditional trade route from Jita to Amarr is about to be broken for the first time in 15 years, 14 years. For those that don't know, when Eve started out, everything went through, not everything, but most trade went to a central trade hub, and that was Ulai. And Ulai is in Genesis. And that was like the capital system. It's where Concord's headquarters is. In lore, there's a famous system there that was attacked and destroyed, and it symbolized the central government of these empires. Well, after that, like they used to call that like the trade highway. Everything kind of went there. But then people started building trade hubs based on multiple criteria. But one of the biggest trade hubs was Jita. And so Jita started to grow because it had good access to multiple different regions, and it had a lot of missions in it. So it became a place where people would trade equipment to run these missions. And it grew out of those forces. And then, in order to make it easier for people to move around, they connected Jita and Amarr. That wasn't originally there, but there was a super gate that was, or a super jump that connected two regions, the northern regions to the southern regions. And one of the key components of that is a system called Niarja. Let's have a look at that real quick. Well, you can see here, the forge is the blue. Just for people that don't know, the forge is the beginning of the north, basically, in blue. And then way down here in the middle of these yellow is domain. And that long jump from Citadel to... Is it Citadel? Yeah. From Citadel to the Forge is right here in Niarja. And so this system, as you can see, jumps in the last 48 hours. This thing gets like 1,500 to 2,000 jumps during its most active time. So that is a ton of traffic, maybe the most in the game, going back and forth between Amarr and Jita, or basically between the north and the south. That system has a blue sun, and we know that blue suns are probably systems that are going to end up being attacked by Triglavians. And so if this trade route is broken, you will see a lot more of those secondary trade routes start to light up. You will see ganking have to go in different directions instead of all along this one path here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens coming soon, coming on the 26th. Now, that is a prediction that Niarja will be broken. It just meets the profile of, I think, what CCP is trying to do, but also in lore, what the Triglavians are trying to take over, which are these blue sun systems. All right, let's go back to statistics real quick. So we checked out Lonetrek. Rio, let's go to that battle. I think I have it here. Yeah, it's we call it Rio, but it's R10 in the Kalavala Expanse. Again, this is Horde's territory. And it looks like it's a dread bomb, I think, to take out this guy here in the red. This was a Ragnarok flown by someone from Horde Armada. That is Pandemic Hordes. Like, I think that's their capitals. Super capital, I think, group. So that was destroyed by, it looks like, a dread bomb. And then these would be an escalation, these Titans that came out from headquarters there to destroy these dreadnoughts as quickly as possible. So the reason you drop a bunch of dreads is to try to destroy something big as quickly as you can. The counter move to that is to drop things that kill dreadnoughts as fast as possible. So you don't drop 3 or 4 Titans, because that would take too long. You drop a bunch of Titans and you spread your targets out and you blast them all at the same time. Because you need to eliminate that damage, that DPS, as quickly as possible. So let's see what's related to this. I'm hearing there's a hell related. Oh, you are correct. There it is. So I wonder what happened here. This is a slice that is Solarius or Solaris Tonium. That's, I guess, the name of the alliance, but it's Slice, we call them. It looks like their hell was destroyed in this. So I wonder what was first. Maybe that Slice hell came under fire first, followed by a Titan drop. And one of the Titans was picked off as well. So Goon Swarm, bold move, attacked supers inside of Horde's capital system. One DQ. William, do you know what happened in 9UY by any chance? It's actually not that high a number, but it's 96 ships.
Well, not much, but it's kind of the normal thing that we have been doing. So I'm on the side of Wrecking Crew, and the other side is Provi. So we've been camping their capital system. So if you notice, if you go to the 9UI Killboard for the past couple days, essentially it's just been small gang. You know, there was a dreadlock on their part, you know, but other than that, it's just been, you know, our side and their side just sort of killing each other in very small gangs. Mostly less than a dozen people on each side, which is, I think, really, really fun content.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there was any big center point collision. 96 ships destroyed in 24 hours. Kind of low. All right, let's go back to 1DQ. Somebody wanted to know what happened to 1DQ. That's the heart of Delve. Looks like Ranger Regiment lost a lot of pods here.
They lost that arc, looks like.
Oh, okay. Let's have a look on the Killboards.
9-bill arc.
Change that to 5 billion and up, and we'll go through the Killboards now. So we're looking for something to 1DQ. Let's first start here. You have a 6 billion pod, a couple pods that are expensive. One of them, Inquarius, belonging to Doomsday, hilarious name. Goonswarm guy was killed by Siege Green. It's a 5 billion ISK pod. And then an asset in Metropolis. So asset is a system we just talked about yesterday or 2 days ago. And you might look at, you might look at some of the stuff that's going on there. That's a 6.5 billion ISK pod. I'm curious though, what's he got in there? High grade snakes. Yeah, anything that gets into the billions is usually high grade snakes. There's medium grade as well. A lot of low suckers will run with medium grade implants. When you have high grade, that's either a very wealthy pirate or a wealthy merchant. You won't see typical combatants using high grade anything because it's just too expensive and not worth the setback. So usually medium grade is for people who do not expect to lose those implants. And then for nullsec people that die all the time, they usually either don't have implants or they have fairly cheap ones. All right, in Lonetrek, you had a freighter. So yeah, Oshnar go down to 9 billion. That's the price of the ship itself. Also in 1DQ, you're right, there was an arc that was destroyed, but it was 9 billion, so that's mostly the arc. We'll take a look anyway.
A lot of these deaths in 1DQ come from a specialist group that's currently there. It's Bazikil and a few select others. It's a very selective group. It's a bunch of long-time players that all know each other. A lot of them from Pandemic Legion and groups that are associated with them. But they have quite an operation set up there. They camp and look out for freighters, jump freighters, carriers and such, and they'll just quickly kill them and move on to other systems. They've got, well, they're very well set up in Delve.
Yeah. So Steelhorse says they've been there for over 3 years. But yeah, it looks like this is basically the price of the ship at 8.5 billion or 8.8 billion. So the cargo is really not that valuable. All right, carrying on to Rorqual in Rio, along with the Hell and the Ragnarok. So that was a good dread bomb by Goon Swarm. They took out all 3. So that was a big bite. Then in Yudama, you have a Fenrir going down for 6 billion. I think that is, yeah, Fenrir is actually the freighter. It's not, Nomad is the jump freighter version of this freighter. So that's a big cargo price. Looks like plastic wrap. Inside he had, looks like a rattlesnake. That still is only 1 billion. I think that's overpriced at 1 billion. Oh, he had 2 of them. That's why.
A lot of.
Yeah, those are about 700 million each. So that accounts for the 1.4 billion in losses there. Those ships were destroyed, but he has 2 plastic wraps here with no price on them. Those are worth 1 cent or 1 isk. So there's no way to know where how much the actual cargo cost. So I'm trying to figure out. They used to break it down. The ship is worth, yeah, 1.5 billion. The rattlesnakes are basically 1.5 billion, so that equals 3. So where's the other half of that go? Oh, right here, Corellia A-type adaptive nano, 16 of those for 1.2 billion. And then a lot of Mexilon, 1.2 billion. That's a lot. It's 18 million pieces of Mexilon. That's a bottleneck mineral, or at least it used to be. So that can be valuable. And we know that mineral prices are going up in general. And then finally you have compressed, rich Plagio class. And there's about 800 million worth of that. So I guess it adds up. But yeah, freighter downed. And that was down in the Citadel and Yudama in that trade route that we talked about earlier between Jita and Amarr. Going a little further back into May 19th, this is stuff that happened after we were on the air. Some good stuff here. In the Citadel, you have an Okator or Akator going down for 7 billion. That is a industrial ship, so let's have a look at that. Actually, sorry, that's a deep space transport. That's called a DST. So if you hear DST, it's a deep space transport. That's a thicker, more armored version of a hauler. It's a T2 version. And it's meant to carry more. It is immune to getting scrammed up to, I think it has 2 points naturally. So it's like, it's meant to get away. But they're slow, real slow. So they get caught. And this was taken out by Heldon. Tell us about Heldon.
Sure. So, now that, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but Pirate is either taking a break or disbanding or something along those lines. Heldon does the same mission as them, if not a little bit better. I think that they have a very tight-knit organization, as opposed to Pirate was. And yeah, they kind of do the same ganking, high-sec war deck, sort of ransoming that Pirate was famous for.
Cool. So we'll talk about Pirate and high-sec ganking in just a few minutes. So yeah, they took out this DST, and a lot of it was in the ship, I guess. Let's see, what do they have? Oh, here it is. There's the cargo. Lots of stuff. Well, there's geckos, 13 geckos. Oof, that hurts because those things are worth a lot. And they have been worth less, and they have been worth more. So they're kind of at a middle state right now. They used to go for as low as 80 million Now, these are unique drones that drop rarely. They were given away as a prize a few years back. They're kind of like gold in that they pretty much hold value because they're unique, they're rare, and they do omni damage. So you can use them in many different occasions where you need to switch damage type. And so these things go for 80 million up to about double that. 160 is close. I think it's seen it as 180 million each. That's each. So 13 of those going down, easily worth 1.4 billion.
This is kind of a lesson also in ship types. You had described the DST as slow, but if you notice on the ship fittings for this death, number one, they have some missing low slots. I don't want to criticize the pilot too much, but just make sure that you're maximizing the good out of the ship that you're flying, right? So if it's meant to be tanky, it's meant to be slow. So don't try to use, a lot of these inertia stabilizers, nanofibers. Instead, what you should be focusing on is what it's actually good at, and that is surviving the initial gank. So had it been more tanky fit, it probably would have lived.
Right. I think when you want to move faster, you put in propulsion modules that make you faster. But the drawbacks to those modules is it makes you thinner. Basically, if you do these nanofiber structures, you're putting in a thin fiber or a thin material into your structure. So you end up having less of a tank than usual. So you're sacrificing speed for armor. So you're taking a ship that should be armored to the teeth and you're making it faster, reducing its native armor tanking capability. But I guess if you're in Udama, you're thinking in terms of speed. Well, actually, this one was in Savala, the Citadel. But you're thinking in terms of speed, not tank, until you run into a group like Held On or Pirate or Code. And then you need that tank. Okay, let's move on. So Cloud Ring, Cloud Ring is where Goon Swarm has just deployed. So that's TNT that picked off this Pro Raider. That is also, I don't know if that's a deep space. It's not. It's the smaller version, which is the Blockade Runner. And these ships are meant to be cloaky and fast. And you can see this one's built for escape. It's got initial stabilizers and warp core stabilizers. The inertial stabilizers make you turn and pivot faster, so you can get into warp faster. And the warp core stabs are the ones that ward off being tackled. So this one was carrying. Am I right about that, William?
Yes.
Got to check myself. This one was carrying about 6 billion in parts. These look like, let's see. These are not T2. I think this is salvage. Yeah, I think.
Some of it is, it all seems regular salvage, not the blue salvage, which is worth a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But vast majority is salvage with a tiny bit of PI.
Yeah. I'm trying to see where the cost was for this ship, but that's a total of 6 billion. I don't see 6. Oh, here it is right here in this contaminated Loretz fluid. 3 billion. You had 17,000 of those units that totaled 3 billion. So that kind of hurts. So let's see who got them. Seventh Sanctum looks like they picked them off. And that was, Ministry of Inappropriate Footwork. That's a good Alliance tournament group. Great name. Based on Monty Python, I think. Okay, and we have a couple of, we have an Esoteria Rorqual that went down. In J-Space, you have a Dreadnought that went down. And I think we can skip the rest. There's an Orca here. We might have covered that by Tidal Holdings. That was wiped out by Outfit 418. What a cool name. Let's take a quick look at that Orca. Orcas don't usually cost this much. They're usually, most I've seen them is 700 million. So the ship itself is, well, I guess it's more expensive again. So it's 845 million. So basically that's... Here's the cargo.
Drop to Fortizar.
I didn't even see it. There it is. Fortizar. There's your cost. So this thing had a Fortizar, had fuel for it. And where'd this get killed? Oh, this is in... yeah, this all makes sense now. It's in wormhole space carrying a Fortizar. Why would you use an Orca in wormhole space?
More tank, I believe, than freighter, but I could be wrong on.
It does have more tank. It's also a lot slower, but I think the reason you use an Orca, my guess would be that you're going to use that Orca in the wormhole itself for hauling ore. So it's going to live there.
You can't bring a freighter into a large wormhole. If my recollection is correct, you can only bring it through a very large wormhole.
Yes. No, I remember now.
So an Orca has less mass than a freighter?
Correct.
Okay.
An Orca you can bring it through large. A freighter, however, you need to find the very large, which very large connections into K-space are not that common.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's the Killboards today. Whew. That was a lot of stuff. Last thing we'll look at is timers. Not much on here today, because yesterday was a huge day for, I think, Unspoken. They had like 6 or 7 iHubs that were under attack. I wonder what the results were of that. They might have all successfully been defended. Who knows? Yeah, not much going on the iHubs today. A couple in Aquarius that belong to Goon Swarm. And the Watchmen and Catch have an iHub that's up for grabs in a day or so. Okay, so let's turn our attention to our story today. Well, one correction before we start. Yesterday, I talked about the southeast of EVE Online on the map, and I went over about 6 different regions and talked about their characteristics from memory. But somebody wrote me name XIX Simar, and gave me some information, so I'm going to read it to you guys so that we can have a complete record on that. And so Innsmother, Detroit, Wicked Creek, all space is shared between Fire Coalition. So everyone lives everywhere. It doesn't matter if space belongs to Razor or XIX or Red Alliance. All coalition members can rat mine there. So everyone gets to defense fleets. Killboard activity is because of 80-man Horde Cormorant fleet that came in 2 or 3 times a day. That come in 2 or 3 times a day. So that's what he's saying here is that Horde comes in with cheap fleets many times a day into those areas. So nothing serious happened in Detroit, Innsmother, or Wicked Creek at the moment. In Cache, NC and Horde deployed there to strike Innsmother and Detroit. He said Detroit, but I think that's spelled corrected. But Detroit. Legacy deployed some forces to fight them. Fire Coalition also had some timer fights there. Nalsekia, he's using abbreviations, so I have to translate. NSH is Nalsekia Scholpen, is deployed out of region. As I understand, no one wants that space, so no one lives there. This is just a proxy war between Legacy and Horde Fam. That's the first time I've heard that. It's usually Pan Fam for Pandemic Legion leading that, or Panda Fam for Fraternity being a big force in it. And this is the first time I've heard Horde Fam. But Horde Fam might actually be the most accurate. Let me take to a different image here. Because I'm on something else here. Let's see. Okay, so Scalding Pass. Valkyrie Alliance live there and have fights with some Great Wildlands locals. There have always been locals, by the way, in Great Wildlands. Locals call Snuff Volta, sometimes PL. I guess what he means by call is bat phoning, where you call in bigger friends to help you out because you're overwhelmed or you want to win. And those are big friends to have. Snuff Volta and Pandemic Legion are big friends to have. So locals are connected, if that's true. Valkyrie have support of Legacy and Fire coalitions. And also some fraternity lives in Curse. So VLK have fights with, that's Valkyrie Alliance, have fights with them too, with the same support. So nothing serious is happening in the Southeast region, some proxy fights in cache. That's what I was referring to earlier when I talked about it yesterday. No one lives there, and no one, I think, wants it. Some fights around Scalding Pass, in surrounding NPC regions. Activity in Fire Coalition regions is due to some roaming gangs, multiple Horde Cormorants fleets. Okay, so that is his version of what's going on. Thank you, XIX, Samarka, Simar. I also got another piece of information about this area. See if I can remember where it is. Oof, it's going to take me a while to find it. Just so you know, if you guys send me messages and I don't reply, I get about 10 or 15 people writing me every day with information, and it's hard to sort through and remember on Discord, so it's not that great. I'll give it a second here if I can get this. Okay. Oh, nuts. Somebody, oh, you know what? It was not in a personal message. I think this was in one of our channels. We're going to take a commercial break. I always wanted to do that. So hang out for just a second. Okay, we're back. I couldn't find it. It's lost to me, but somebody explained to me what was going on in that area. And they said something about Nullsecnia was being installed or reinstalled by Legacy, and PandaFam was resisting their re-entry into, I think it was Innsmother. So that's what I remember from memory. So there is a minor war going on there. I think they're trying to install or reinstall Nullsecnia. So there's a bit of a scuffle, a bit of a proxy war. But the other areas, since nobody actually wants them in earnest, there's really just a lot of small gang stuff that goes on there. All right, that's the battles. Now let's meet William from the Rogue University and Rogue Consortium. How's it going, William?
Everything's good.
Thanks for waiting around for all that. That was a lot of information today. That's
important.
Yeah, let's and thanks for filling in some information there. Let's talk about you first of all. Like, what's your background, EVE Online? How did you come up, basically?
Sure. So I was in the Marine Corps in 2007, and we were all bored sitting around in tents. Everybody else was playing Call of Duty, so some dude was like, hey, there's a space. So I was like, I like spaceships, let me download it. So I downloaded it, and literally the only people that were online were a bunch of Russians. So I actually played with the Russians in their time zone for like 3 or 4 years, literally doing nothing but being a miner. And I did some mission running, some small things like that, some small PvP. I was always on the fringe of some of the events that were happening at the time. Over time, though, I decided I wanted to become a bigger part of the game, and I didn't really know where to make my impact, so I just kind of wandered around, did some ganking, did some classes in EVE University and things like that. Ultimately, though, what I decided to do to make my impact was to start my own group that would teach new players how to be involved and get activity going in the right way. So I had seen a lot of the larger groups try to do that, and retention was very poor. So I wanted to try to see what the right recipe was for making as high of a retention of new players as I possibly could. So I recruited a bunch of new players. I started my own corporation, Naval Defense Force. And I started, at the time, what was called Naval Defense Academy. Later, it was the ULI Academy, and now it is the Rogue University. And the Rogue University is now sort of the culmination of all those efforts. So Now I run that and my main corporation essentially as a place where new players can get involved in the game, get involved in nullsec fights, and have a smaller community with which to answer all of their questions. So yeah, we're very happy around where we're at. We've got a lot of really great players and a lot of really great content. Sure. So the Rogue Consortium is the main alliance. That's where all of the main players exist and live, and where all of our structures and SOV is housed. The Rogue University is where the new players are. So it's War Deck immune, which is really helpful for keeping new players in. But it's also a place where you can sort of have a lower level of permissions for newer players. So that way you can intake newer players without having the same kind of hardcore vetting that you need for a major nullsec alliance. So it allows us to recruit new players, give them the ability to join many of the fleets, and then slowly over time, as they increase their permissions, they can join more and more fleets, gain more of our trust, get more of the training, train into the right doctrines, and then ultimately they can graduate from our program and join the main alliance, one of our main corporations.
So sorry about that. I was muted, but what you didn't hear was me ask what was the difference between Rogue Consortium and Rogue University. I'll stay unmuted. Yeah. That was me. You didn't hear it, but I mean, you heard it, but they didn't hear it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So the difference between the Rogue Consortium
that's okay. You already you just explained.
Oh,
it.
did
yeah. I just wanted to tell them why they didn't hear it because I was muted.
Okay.
Sometimes I mute when I type so that I don't disturb what you're saying, but I have to remember to unmute when I ask my next question. So that's clearing that up. Okay. So where does the Rogue Consortium live, and what are they up to?
So we live in Providence, and the vast majority of us are actually former Provi block members. So, we are fighting a war against Providence block. And so in a way, it's kind of a civil war between NRDS and NBSI. Everyone thought that when Spectre Fleet was going to do their little campaign, that it was really going to be purple versus not red, don't shoot. But instead, the real conflict is between our group of former Providence members who've sort of given up the NRDS life versus the Providence block NRDS members.
So this is really a split among the philosophy of what to do when you encounter someone.
Exactly. So I flew with Providence for about 4 years, and I still have a lot of great friends on that side, so I don't want to say that this is any type of bitter fight or anything. But at the same time, it is very much of a difference of opinion. I came to Providence because I wanted to help my new players and to get them involved in the shallower nullsec that's easier for them to transit, to go back and forth between. And that's what Providence block originally was and stood for. The problem is that that is no longer the case. They haven't been recruiting, they've been losing members, and unfortunately, our side of the war is the only one that's really getting their knee deep into recruiting new players. And as a result, of the past year or so, our side has gotten a lot stronger, and theirs has sort of remained the same. Which is unfortunate, because I really do believe that the best way for Providence is to have healthy PvP and content in the region, and we really do need two sides for that type of war. So my hope is that they can sort of replicate what we did in the Rogue University in Providence block, so that way we can continue this really wonderful conflict.
I see. Okay, I have some apologizing to do. I'll get to that in a little bit. But first, who are your allies? Who do you work with?
Sure. So we work with Honorable Third Party, Purple Helmeted Warrior, Sadow's new alliance, Dreadbomb, Calcif Templis, formerly of Calmill, Noir, who's a friend of the show. So a bunch of really good small to medium-sized alliances that are part of the non-coalition coalition called Wrecking Crew.
Wrecking Crew. Okay, so all those together are the Wrecking Crew.
Correct.
Okay. So I don't know why I was confused about this. Maybe you can clear it up. Maybe I'm just hopeless. But Wrecking Crew, I thought, was a branch off of Pandemic Legion led by Rocket X. And they were known for whale hunting years ago.
Yes. So essentially, they originally were that, and they are still led by Rocket X. That is our current coalition. That being said, the vast majority of the player base is not that. So if you will recall, they invaded Providence, PL did. And a lot of the forces that had already pre-existed there, such as Purple Helmeted Warriors and Honorable Third Party, they had been hunting in Providence a lot. And so essentially what we did is they used to be our enemies. So we used to literally, every single time HTP would come into local, we would curse them, right? But now we've essentially decided to join them. And so TRC, the main alliance, is primarily made up of former Providence members. But the coalition itself is primarily former, blue block, blue donut alliances. So, for instance, a lot of people have come down from Pandemic Horde and Legion. A lot of people have come from Legacy and Test. So we have groups, essentially forsaking the blue donut to come down to fight in the Civil War in Providence. But the Rogue Consortium Alliance itself is primarily made up from Providence members. For instance, we have had a few defections from Providence block come over to our side. So Sons of Kronos, for instance, was a major Provi block alliance member of Care Factor, but they have recently decided to join our side of the NBSI war.
Okay, so here's my apology. I had said some things about you a few weeks ago from some limited information. And here you are to clear up some of that stuff. Let's go over some of the things I said earlier. I said originally that you guys were probably new to the area and didn't know Providence very well because you guys looked like you were taking Sov in Providence, and Provi block has always been the holders. That's a loaded term in EVE Online. It's part of the lore. The holders are like the aristocrats that hold territory for Amarrian aristocracy or whatever. So they call themselves the holders, and these are people like CVA and Provi block. I said that this new group probably didn't know that your Providence is supposed to belong to Provi block. So is that the case?
No, we've been here forever. And we intend to remain here. We believe that we have the best vision for what the region should look like. So their vision is remain the same size, remain the same players, be very vigilant against newcomers. Our side of the war is recruit new players, train university, have good fights, and again, this is not to be bitter towards their side. They do a very good job of providing content, but at the same time, I really do wish that they sort of take on our mission as recruiting, and they, I think that's one of the reasons why they've seen some significant losses recently.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard split off from Provi. A lot of people have split off. Notably, Jintan grew frustrated and left after trying to help them out. You had Bard Ghost, same thing. And so what's the problem with Providence from your perspective?
Well, again, and I want to repeat this again, I have a lot of friends on this side. So, this is from frustrations that they have indicated to me past when I left. So I was part of ULI Federation. And ULI Federation had felt the brunt of the Pandemic Legion invasion. And after that war, everyone essentially was told them, you need to build up your Super and Titan fleet, you need to build up your use of capital ships, you need to recruit new players, you need to train them, and you need to make sure that you're adapting to the new world. But a lot of these guys, they've been in Providence and they've been in the leadership for the coalition for so many years. They don't really want to adapt. They think that they can exist as the game had, with carriers and dreads not being used in Providence almost ever. So they have what they call their sleeper super fleet.
Why do they not want to use capital ships?
I think it's part of the Bushido Provi code. You don't use capitals. So whenever we use capitals against them, like we use HA dreads, and we use fax to support our subfleets, they believe that that is dishonorable, and we're just doing it as a force multiplier and adapting to the gameplay mechanics. And so I think that's the real big reason why they've been losing is they don't really want to adapt to the new gameplay. Instead, they want to rely on how they've always fought. But of course, you have to adapt. You have to recruit new players. You have to train into capital ships and supers and titans. You just have to.
So you're saying these Providences refuse to really grow or to use expensive bigger capital ships. And I wonder if they're just not with the meta, in other words, because you have the example of Goons swarming, the example of Horde, the example now of Legacy Test, all growing and growing into capitals. Fraternity is hot on the trail of creating as many capitals for as many players as they can get. And you're saying that is the recipe for success. Provi doesn't want to come out of the Stone Age, basically.
Yeah, it cuts from both ends, right? So you need new players and new ships, and you need to train up the new generation of fighters and fleet, and they aren't doing that. And they also are not using the capital ships they have, much less training into new ones. And so that really is the big deciding factor here. You know, if you want to have a successful alliance, you have to make sure that your members are always pushing into the higher level. Like, you don't have to become the next Horde. That's not what I'm saying. You just have to make sure that you're adapting and that you're fighting back with the tools that you have at your hands.
Right. On the other side of that, I think this is something EVE University used to do. Whenever they would get war decked long ago when you couldn't avoid it, they would just hide for weeks and weeks, and they would prohibit their members from undocking. You couldn't run to the market unless you had special permission. It was just like total lockdown. And when you asked them why, it was to deprive targets for the people who had war decked them. So I wonder if Provi isn't doing the same thing by depriving bigger groups from using their dreadnoughts on Provi, because Provi will not fly anything that is valuable, at least as far as capital ships and stuff.
Well, they do undock sub-capital fleets, and they generally try to avoid using pirate and faction and Tech 2 doctrines. Mostly, a lot of what they fly, aside from their nightmares, mostly what they fly is a lot of Hurricane Fleet issues and Abaddons and Tech 1 variants of things that are cheap to insure, cheap to replace. And whereas our side of the war uses rattlesnakes, Macarials, more expensive, blingier things, so that way they can, we can have less people but still be able to defeat them on the battlefield. And so they just need to adjust to that new reality. But you're right about EVE University, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I started my own organization, is when you show your community that you don't really want them to play the game, then they're going to leave the game. And so what I decided was I wanted to make sure that we created a community where people actually played the game and played it the way they wanted to.
Because in your opinion, the game is, what is playing the game?
Undocking your ship.
Okay.
So, when EVE University used to give that order, hey, listen, I don't want you to play the game for 2 people are paying subscriptions. Are they really going to follow that advice? No, they're going to either leave the game or leave EVE University.
Right. So let me correct something I said earlier. Oxide Plays basically says that was the case 5 years ago for EVE Uni. So if that's changed, that's true. I was in EVE Uni maybe 10 years ago, whenever it started, way back then.
Yeah, same.
So the reference that they still do that might be old, but the point remains the same. You deprive enemies of targets, that starves them out. They're not having any fun. Your guys aren't either, but you're taking the sacrifice so that the other guys get dissuaded. If you are disciplined enough to constantly turtle up and deprive people of any fun, then they learn the lesson like, well, don't war deck EVE Uni because they're no fun. But it needs to be something that is a disciplined thing. If you have, it's almost like this virus, right? Like everybody has to stay home, because if 25% of the people go out and mill around and continue to get infected, then the 75% of the people that are staying home have to stay home longer. So same thing happens in EVE. If you have 25% of your ships that are, people who are out there flying and getting blown up, it's going to take even longer for that other 75% to feel that it's safe enough to come back out, because the people blowing up the ships are going to stick around if they're getting 25% of the people out there flying. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely, but it isn't really the only thing that Provi Block essentially right now is depriving us of is the super and capital. But I posted in voice chat a sort of the campaign of how the war has been going, and essentially, just this year, since January 1st, You know, I mean, the total of, what is this, 2.6 trillion ISK has been lost on the sides of our bat phones and on both sides of both coalitions, just in the main alliances alone. So there's a lot of activity happening in Providence, and very good, healthy subcapital fights are occurring at a lot of levels. But as you can see, Providence, you know, for every you know, one ISK that we lose, they lose 2 ISK. You know, and that is because they don't want to upship. They always want to try to keep at the same Bushido Code level of fighting that they had previously.
Now, another thing I said was, because I was looking you up, that you were essentially a Korean group. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So we have a very strong Korean contingent of our alliance. I would say that, you know, roughly, if we were to talk about the numbers of humans that we have.
So I wasn't wrong on that.
No. So
okay.
yeah, so we have about, I would say, 1/3 Korean, 1/3 European, 1/3 North American. So really healthy dynamic across all of our time zones. A lot of our Korean players are very new to the game. So you'll notice that in Rogue University, the Alliance itself, our heat map shows that we're most active in the Korean time zone. And that's because we're training up our Korean friends to play the game and to get into the more higher end doctrines. So we're really excited by the level of activity that the Koreans have had and the growth that time zone has given to the game.
Fantastic. You're one of the few groups I know that's taking advantage of the new players coming in due to the localization, that is the language change from the EVE Online client to Korean.
Yes, and Siege Green is one of our allies in Wrecking Crew as well. I don't think they're formally a part, but they are definitely friends of ours. And they fight with our Koreans all the time, or on the side of our Koreans.
Yikes. All right, so Provi is intransigent, and tell me about this NRDS. You want to attack things that are in front of you. And what Provi tends to do is, for those that don't know, this is an old concept. NRDS, not red, don't shoot it. That means if it's neutral or blue, you just leave it alone. If it's red, then you can kill it. Providence only puts people who are kill on sight on a list that are known to come in and basically kill things. So what Providence wants to be, and what NRDS philosophy is everybody gets to exist in this nullsec space as long as you don't shoot your neighbor. Once you shoot your neighbor, you get on the kill list, and then you're red. So they will shoot you when they see you on site. It's like being a police department or a prefecture.
Not quite red, but it's pretty close.
Orange,
yeah, I mean,
whatever.
you know, it's and they, you know, again, I left this style, so you know, I'm not going to be entirely
unbiased,
non-biased, right? But let me just kind of let
Sure.
you. The reason why this philosophy exists, you know, the pretense behind it is that they wanted to be sort of the police of Providence. That way, new players can get involved. You know, so that way they could come into Providence relatively safely. They can mine to their heart's content. They can become involved in nullsec, and over time they can get standings and access to the intel channels, etc. The problem is that really hasn't happened. You know, ever since the PL invasion, they have really turtled up, and the few, you know, you know, blue entities that live in Providence really are very small and aren't nearly the same type of population that you saw prior to the PL invasion. And they have also become a lot more mistrustful of new people, incoming people. And so, unfortunately, I think that the NBSI side, you know, we'll shoot you if you enter our space, but chances are we'll also give you an invite to Rogue University. You know, so we have a chance for them to become a part of the larger community, while also, you know, defending our own space and our own territory. I'll be honest, we kind of exploit NRDS, right? NRDS allows you to just create a neutral character and just go into their space and exist and, you know, feed intel on who's and what systems, etc. So it really doesn't it doesn't help their cause at all. You know, and if their intent was to be a police force so that newer players could get involved in the game, they have failed. And, you know, I do hope that they change their attitude on that and they do recruit new players and they get more people involved in Providence that are neutrals. But I just don't see that happening with the current leadership.
I like this comment from Red Unforgiven. Says, gunpoint recruiting works wonders.
It does. Some of my best guys, you know, are people that we killed, you know,
Yeah.
and so like they were like, oh my God, how'd you kill me so quickly? And they were like, hey, listen, here's a rogue university. You can join up. We'd love to learn how to fight so you can fight back.
Yeah. People, if they don't take it personally, will look at it as a opportunity to learn from people that are better than them. So if they want to actually improve, they'll say, if they don't take it personally, they'll be like, yeah, all right. And if the person who kills them is nice and polite, I've had very polite people kill me. In fact, I belonged to a group called Adhocracy at one point. It's kind of early on for them too. And they used to call themselves the Gentleman Vikings. So they would come in and wreck the place, but they were very polite about it. All right.
Yeah, and it is kind of like you know, you have to create the community you want, right? And so if people are going to be mad in local, right, those aren't the type of people you want to recruit. You want to recruit people that live in kind of the same atmosphere and the same type of environment you want to have.
All right, cool. Now, talk to us about, this is open for everybody. Pirate. What happened to Pirate? They lost a bunch of members.
Yeah.
Did they
so
close?
Essentially, it looks like all of the corporations were kicked, and it looks like they sent out an alliance-wide email indicating their reasons why. Now, I don't know if that's their spin or whatever, but they claim that you know, part of it is because of CCP, part of it is civil strife, part of it is they just think that their new players aren't sufficient elite enough for their level. And you know, so that they wanted to go back to their roots and or take a break from the game. It's not really clear. But you know, as I indicated before, I think that Pirate actually was a really big contributor to a lot of the newer corporations dissolving, and I actually think that that was a good thing. Them existing.
Explain that a little bit for people that don't understand what that means. Pirate.
Sure. So,
and then that's a good thing or a bad thing. Explain what it is and if it's good or bad.
So Pirate, what they would do is they would war deck essentially everybody that they came across, right? And if you had a Rataru in some system somewhere, they would come by and they would either kill it or they would make your life hell as a corporation. So if you have a structure, you're war deck susceptible, and they will declare war on you, and chances are they will take you down. In my opinion, that having an entity like Hell Dawn or Pirate is a good thing. And the reason is that they clean out a lot of these smaller corporations that don't have any friends, that are run by newer players that don't really know what they're doing. And those corporations really have very piss poor retention. And they oftentimes give extremely bad advice to new players. You know, I've created some spy characters in different smaller corporations, and the universal fact is that you need an experienced player with a good infrastructure and setup and friends to help you. And oftentimes it's just not the case with these newer corporations. So Pirate oftentimes was a catalyst for letting these smaller corporations realize that they either needed to band together, find someone experienced to lead them, or they needed to fold into a group that did have that type of experience and infrastructure.
Good morning. And if I can offer just a tiny bit...
Let me turn you up before you finish, Francois. 1 second.
Is that any better?
Let me just turn you up. Sorry, I do all this on one screen, so it's hard. 1 second. Yeah, I have you at 200, so talk louder.
So the mail that went out from Pirate, and I talked to a couple of the guys, essentially said that, well, the individual who wrote the mail, if we're going to trust him, and it seems legit, essentially said that Pirate was never supposed to be the sit on the trade hub and farm and make ISK sort of organization, which is kind of their thing at this point. Yes, they're doing war decks, and yes, they're bashing structures, but the mail said that they were supposed to be fighting and hunting and doing PvP, not farming high sec. And they didn't like that it was pretty much just farming the trade hubs for people who don't know better. That was like the primary cause. So they grew, they just spidered out and got recruited a lot of people that weren't really able to fight or do anything. All they could do is farm the trade hubs, and that was never what they wanted it to be. And the other factors kind of just fed into that.
All right, so that's the end of PIRAT, at least for now. PIRAT.
Well, actually, so the guys that I spoke to that were in corps that were removed essentially said, "Yeah, we're just going to reform again," because 19 corps were removed. That was all of them except Gobstop.
I
I
have those
noticed this
highlighted
happen.
here.
Yeah, I noticed this happen because my main is in Signal Cartel, and Pirate had a war on us. And over the course of 6 minutes, I got 19 notifications. Corp has left Pirate. Corp has left Pirate. Corp has left Pirate.
So you saw it happen real time.
Yeah, I was like literally just watching, and I was like, "Well, this is interesting." So I just pinged a couple of guys that I in Pirate that I knew, and just asked them what was going on. And I pretty much got a universal reply.
Yeah. Well, you have the Marmite mercenaries in here. So that used to be its own alliance. And Nullify, I think, is, let's check Nullify Corporation.
I'm not sure if the Marmite in there is the original guys, because the Corp is not the original Corp. It was created only a few months ago.
Oh, then that's not them, unless it's one of the,
yeah. It'll be them. That Corp entity, isn't it?
This other group, Nullify, has been around a while. Yep, this is them. So they were like kicking around. They're in Nulli Secunda. That's where I ran into them. Cascade Eminent. They were in the Marmite Collective, so I wonder if this is the Marmite Collective's new form. Yeah, they've been in Circling 2, Triumvirate, Fraternity, and now Pirate. Yeah, Nullify. Just a few guys, I guess. It's really just a couple friends. They were bigger than that, I think, in Nulli. But anyway, as far as PIRAT, one thing I heard about PIRAT, I'll call them, or Pirate, I don't know, is that they were incredibly effective. Like if you put them to a task, they would get it done. Like within days, it would be done. Whereas other mercenary groups or pirate groups, it'd be like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. Like they weren't very efficient. But Pirate was, every time they were hired by, you know, market tycoons to do a thing, they did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I wasn't as, you know, angry at them as a lot of other groups were, because they always did what they said they were going to do. And yes, they were griefers, and yes, they were gankers, and yes, they were a massive pain in the ass to a lot of new players. But, you know, there's a lot of really, really toxic communities out there that I would say are far worse than pirates. So, you know, hats off to them.
All right, well, Pirate is disassembled. We'll reassemble it under a different name. Probably under different leadership, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so that's what happened to Pirate. You know, this, we're going to shift gears one more time. Tomorrow, no, today, CCP has a presentation about the upcoming changes to the game that you will want to see. Fonsway, do you know what time that presentation is? Is it?
The CCP show is very 1700 Eve time. 1700 Eve time.
1700. So that's in a...
Yeah, I'm going to double check that, but that would be in about 50 minutes from now, 50 minutes. 1900? So Gaurav is saying it's at 1900.
1900. Yeah, that's why I figured 1900.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's too far away. That's 3 hours from now.
That's a couple hours.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you, for all you people watching right now, I feel like a wrestler. For all you fans out there, I'm not a big wrestling fan, but I do remember my friends liking it and hearing them talk like that. For all you fans out there, you'll want to catch this 1900 broadcast from CCP on Twitch. So it's Twitch TV/CCP. Check it out.
Yeah, they'll have Ash, Uriel, and Makoto on, along with some CCP devs, to talk about the invasions, current state of things, some story stuff. I mean, they're having the three lore heads on, so it's pretty obvious, you know, what that show is going to be about.
Yeah, here is something that I worry about, and we're going to probably tackle this in two phases. For Talking in Stations, our podcast will have the new material coming out because such big changes to the game play of EVE Online in the form of Triglavian stories, a story arc from the Triglavians. And so what that means basically is this. the game's going to change. The map is going to change. We talked about it earlier about Niarja possibly getting taken over and taken over and not being passable by players. And if that's the case, it breaks a tremendous supply line, which affects the game in huge ways. That's going to all start on the 26th. That's basically in a week. And the way they're escorting this new gameplay in is through lore and the Triglavian story arc, which I believe we're in the 3rd chapter of that, right?
Yeah,
No, Kurt.
They're about to
start
drop chapter 3.
One at a time, Fonsway, and then Dutch.
Sorry, yeah, they are about to drop chapter 3. They haven't really dropped any chapter 3 content yet. The EdenCom sites, the combat sites that are part of the Capsuleer Day Clash, which is over today, that is kind of a lead-in to chapter 3. It's introducing us to some elements.
Okay, so we're about to start chapter 3. Dutch, you were going to say?
No, the exact same thing.
Good. Right. So the point is, we've been through chapter 1, we've been through chapter 2. So let me just go back and review this for you people. And you're going to learn more about this in a few hours through CCP. They have a nice presentation that'll explain what's happened up to now. You'll want to see that in order to get caught up. And that is
a comment on what you said earlier.
Sure.
You said the system may become impassable. So what we saw in the Eclipse trailer was a gate shutting down. It would be very a stretch to say that they did that only for cinematic purposes and not mechanical ones. Like, it would be weird if they didn't include that mechanic, but we haven't seen any references to that. What we have seen direct references to is security status changes from high sec to low and from low to null. And it appears, and again, we can't confirm any of this, but it appears that when the Triglavians win, when they push a system to the state of the fully victory state, which is called final liminality, then the security status in that system will be 0.0.
Right. So why is this important? It's going to change the landscape of the map, basically. You're going to have holes of security in Empire space, not just in low security space, but in high security space. So some high security systems may actually slip to low security systems and be more dangerous and not necessarily unpassable, but a lot more dangerous, and maybe even as low as nullsec. We'll have to see how it works out. Maybe only nullsec systems are created out of low sec, and only low sec systems are created out of high sec systems. We don't know how it works yet, but we'll find out on the 26th. And you might get more information on this on later today. But the chapter 1 of Triglavians was the invasions. So we went into abyssal space. The Triglavians came out of abyssal space, and that was the first chapter, invasions. Now we've been in chapter 2 since October. And chapter 2 has been, for me, it's very hard to define. What has chapter 2 been about?
So, Dutch, you want to grab that?
Well, if you are to make comparisons, like with chapter 1, it was more about getting the start of the invasions, where you basically had the Triglavians starting to use their world arc ships to create bridges through which the Triglavians could enter Empire space. And with chapter 2, you could really see a difference where instead of trying to get a foothold, they're starting to become more and more aggressive. They started to deploy the stellar accelerator structures, which started to not necessarily interfere, but interact with the suns. And then Concord and the Empires started to deploy structures of their own, trying to figure out what it was all about. And that became the flashpoint for a lot of conflict between the Empires, between the Triglavians, and for players to choose, who do you want to support? Do you want to support Triglavians? Do you want to support the Empires? So it was really a difference where instead of trying to get in, they're more about that they got their foot, they're really trying to get in.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's been mention, in the Triglavian communications, in the Concord communications, they're referencing the fact that the Triglavians are referencing the fact that they want us to work with them. Concord is condemning us for working with the Triglavians, and Chapter 3 is where it's really going to come to a head, where it's not, because the only quote-unquote choice that we had to make in Chapter 2 had no impact. It was the mode that you fought in one particular combat site, the top-tier combat site, which is the observatory flashpoint. Every time you ran an observatory flashpoint, you could choose whether to kill the Triglavians or kill the particular empire that was defending it in the space that it was in, depending on where it was in empire space.
Yeah.
But there were no standings affected. There was nothing. There was no lasting impact after you cleared that site, which only took a few minutes. So
It does make
just the
sense, though.
beginning of the story. Yeah.
It does make sense, though, but that's the difference and the balancing act between sticking to the lore and looking at the gameplay, because the way that they also introduced the Sunitra Dreadnought was that you would get the materials by choosing one side, and you could get the BPCs by choosing the other. Yeah. So you needed both sides to get it. And if you start running in support of Triglavians for the blueprints, which you never knew what you were going to get, it could be a ship, it could be a part that you need to build the ship, it could be the same thing over and over again. And if that would affect your standings, that meant that while you're trying to open it up and get more people to get in on the content, you would start locking them out if they run one specific type for a longer period of time. So not including the standing hits in Chapter 2 is a sensible thing.
Yeah. So standings are now being included. They've created brand new factions for this. We now will be able to gain standings with the Triglavian Collective or with Edencom. If you look on HoboLeaks, you can see that all of the rats, all of the Empire rats and all the Triglavian rats have had standings added to them.
Okay, well, we're going to go into this, and this is what I was working up to say. There's new stuff coming. It's based on the previous year's worth of narrative from CCP about Triglavians invading our space. That new stuff is going to be talked about later today, and it will be released on the 26th. That's in a week. And we're going to cover it this Sunday to talk about some of the stuff that's coming. And then we're going to have CCP on the week after that to talk about some of the stuff that has dropped. Now, the reason we're pushing CCP 1 week is so they can actually talk about the changes that have hit Tranquility. If we have them on this Sunday, they'll only be able to tell us the stuff that's not censored. So, or I should say, not under embargo. So that they don't want to kill any surprises. So on the 26th, we'll all find out at the same time what this looks like, what it actually means, how it works together.
Yeah, another major change that is coming is how the invasions work. Until now, there has been a foothold system, and every single solar system
louder, please.
That is one jump. Sorry, every single solar system that is one jump or two jumps from the foothold system is part of an invasion. And the invasion begins, progresses, finishes, and goes away. And those systems are left the way they were. In Chapter 3, we see a different structure, and we don't know how it's going to work. We don't know if it's going to be a foothold with additional systems radiating out from it, if they're going to attack a given constellation or individual solar systems. And most importantly, we don't know if these systems will be able to be flipped back and forth indefinitely, or there will be a cooldown, or we'll have to wait for another invasion to come, or if it's going to be permanent. Like, we have absolutely no idea.
I'd like to make one small addendum. There is one change in the foothold system, and that's if the invasion is over, the stellar accelerator structure tends to still be there and give the bonuses that you also get when you're in the invasion up until you destroy the structure. So there's one small difference.
I would like to mention something about these this new Triglavian stuff. I think it's really wonderful that CCP is adding into this, but I think that they keep on neglecting what new players how they interact with the. So, a lot of new players are dying instantly, being insta-popped in their ventures or whatever to these rats. And they don't even know that an invasion has happened. They don't even know what it is, right? It could be happening in systems over, whatever, it's spreading into the system. They don't understand any of this stuff. So, like, the rules do need to be clarified at some point and posted so that new players can understand and absorb that information. And honestly, I think that they need to consider, what it looks like when, how this impacts new players, because it is impacting them in a negative way. Like, for instance, when this all started, they would literally, the Triglavian rats would camp the new bro rookie systems that they spawned at. So as soon as a new bro undocked, they would be insta-popped and insta-killed. You know, and so they were very slow to adapt and to change that. CCP took like a week to change that. And so I think they also need to take a look at how this is impacting you know, new players in non-Triglavian invasion sites, because it's exciting stuff, but it does have a negative impact.
I think there's a twofold way. Like, one, sure, there could be more, like the same when you get a pop-up warning when you go to a low security space for the first time, where you just get a pop-up with a warning like, hey, this is invaded space by Triglavians, it's very dangerous, it's very deadly. They're already implementing some clear visual signs, like if you're trying to travel and you use an autopilot to plan your route, you start to see the triangles if you're covering through systems that are being invaded. With the Sunshine incursions, you had no visual clues whatsoever until you jumped into the system. So they're definitely making improvements. On the other hand, a part of it, but I'm just going to say part of it, also lies as a responsibility, the way I see it, with us players to also reach out. Like, sure, CCP can do more, and there's definitely things that they should do, but it's not just CCP.
So there's actually, I'm not sure that we're talking about invaded systems here as far as new players getting popped, because if you're in an invasion system, firstly, you do get a pop-up warning. Secondly, as you said, your route becomes triangles. But most importantly, the moment you jump in, everything says that something is wrong here. Everything is red.
Yeah.
Everything is red.
Now I get you. You're talking about the roamers, the Resnaborgs.
Yeah, exactly. So everything is red. The music is eerie. The gates and the structures all have the Triglavian logo on them. But the roaming Rasnaborg scout packs that are out in HiSec, not in invaded systems, have no warning. So the player would literally have to know, I enter this system, and before I engage in anything, I have to descan the whole system for like 2 minutes.
Because like literally,
if I descan
literally what's happening,
system, then I will find the Rasnaborg and I can leave. But new players don't know that.
See, so like literally what's happening right now is my guys, they live in a certain system, right? They undock, they start mining ice or moon ore or whatever, right? And they're in their little venture and they're having fun on comms. And all of a sudden, a bunch of NPCs show up and insta. They have no counterplay, they can't warp off, they have no idea what's going on, and they just die. Right?
Well, they have counterplay.
And it's not
they don't know it.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so, exactly, and you're right. But at the same time, like, you know, it's a lot of information to absorb when you're less than a week into the game. And so, you know, CCP just needs to do better at that. That is the flaw, I think, with this these new NPCs. Yes, it makes HiSec more dangerous, but there's a reason why HiSec exists. And HiSec exists so that newer players can inch into the game. You know, and obviously people live there permanently. I'm not talking about them. I'm saying that, you know, you just have to look at it from the viewpoint of a person who's less than 1 week into the game. And how are you going to give them the tools necessary to live and make their income, and also, you know, decrease the fire hydrant of information that they must absorb in order to survive in this game. And the health and the future of the subscriptions depend upon making sure that they're being happy and they have counterplay that's easily available to them and is, you know, is familiar to them from other games. So like the warnings, they should pop up anytime. You know, it's like, hey, Triglavians are in this system. You know, there's no reason why they couldn't do that. It's very easy fix.
Yep, it is absolutely a fire hose of information, as you said, and adding these Rasnaborg rats that have no warning and exist in HiSec kind of Eve is a series of filters. You know, you get new players in, and it's HTFU and adapt or die and all these things that we like to say. You know, and some players make it through this extra harsh filter system, and some don't. And the Rasnaborg are a very, very harsh filter. On the other end, we have, you know, the enhanced new player experience that they're currently A/B testing. If you create a new character and you get the new tutorial, then you'll get a Halo Combat Evolved style UI introduction where they turn on element by element and tell you how to use it. So no one ever is going to wonder what's an overview again. So the things are getting better and players are getting more capable as they start out. but the Rasenborg having no warning whatsoever is a very harsh filter.
Like when you warp to a combat site, right? You get a pop-up that explains what the combat site is from a lore perspective, but at least lets you know, okay, we are entering into a PvP zone, right? They should have a similar pop-up, is what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
like with the Rasenborgs or roaming Triglavians, no, I agree that's something that needs improving. But I do think CCP is on the right way. Just have to make sure that we keep giving them back intel and info, and we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they introduced the Rasenborgs as I'm just going to say part of the current story arc of the Triglavians. We don't know if at one point they are a permanent thing or if they're going to be phased out. But it's definitely something that needs attention.
They're doubling down. They're doubling down on the Rasenborg. If you look in the updates, you'll see there are two things happening to the Rasenborg. One, the ship line is being expanded. They're adding ships that the Rasenborg didn't have until now, Dracovax and Leshax and more types of E-War. But at the same time, they're turning the Rasenborg. So the Rasenborg were actually named Recon. It was in their name, in the files, and in the game even, for a week. And then they updated it and called them Rasenborg. So they are changing, while they're expanding the line, they're also changing all the rats to really be Recon rats. They're cutting their HP in half. They're making them fatter, they're making them slower, they're removing damage, and they're making their remote effects weaker. So these are truly much easier to kill, much less scary, much more ever present. They are now the Recon. They are now the Scouts.
Yeah, but then it seems that CCP was aware and they have made changes to at least correct part of the issues that we're having this day with how things are in Chapter 2.
Okay. All right. So we're going to have to leave it there. I'm going to go ahead and raid. We're going to have more of this this week and definitely on the Sunday show. And then again, the following Sunday. It's all about Triglavians, getting you caught up, how you participate, and what it all means. So we'll explore much more of that. For now, let's go to Pando. He'll take you around. Torvald's also on, and so is BRMB, but we'll send you over to Pando. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.